Hey folks, Zach Ostrom here, IU Insider Indianapolis Star Coaching Search Diaries, November 29th, 2023. I'm going to keep this one short today, in part because I suspect, I'm not positive, but I suspect it may be the last one we do before there is some real clarity around this search. A handful of names have certainly bubbled up in the last, 24 hours, probably less. I don't want to rank them or anything, but I would include Paul Chryst. I would include potentially Jason Candle at Toledo. Curt Cignetti's name, the James Madison coach, has gained a fair bit of traction. Tom Herman has come up. I do think, and I'm not sure who Indiana's going to hire at this point. I do suspect this is winding toward its conclusion, though. If all goes according to plan, I do suspect that, Scott Dolson has, and I've said this in what I've written, I've said this on our podcast, I've said this, on these videos. Scott Dolson has wanted this process to move quickly since he went into it. And I think it's been pretty clear that this didn't just start with, his decision to move on from Tom Allen on Sunday. I don't think it just started. It certainly didn't start, just with the kind of some of the news that's been confirmed along the week, the Turnkey news, and Turnkey's been involved since the beginning, and the NIL news that we had last night that Indiana's going to have at least about $3 million in NIL resources to support this next head coach. Scott Dolson has wanted to move fast. He's needed to move fast. The portal opens on Monday. Or is it Monday or Tuesday? I can't remember. But either way, the point is it's next week. This coach needs to be settled in and empowered to move through that process as quickly as he can. And I think Scott Dolson's going to have his way. Now, who's it going to be? Believe me, if I could write it, if I could confirm it, I would. What I would say probably more than anything else is stay tuned to indystar.com/sports or whatever your favorite social media channels. Because I do think it's possible that this is something within, at most maybe the next 24 to 36 hours. And that might be at the outside, to be honest with you. We see this kind of resolved with something pretty, something official that kind of accompanies or announces a hiring. So, again, I'm not going to keep this video long today. And I've already kind of probably pushed the boat out as far as I'm comfortable right now in terms of mentioning some names. I don't want to make predictions. I don't, forgive me. I'm not at a place where I feel comfortable sort of saying, this is absolutely, the timeline, or this is the clear front runner, or anything like that. I get a strong sense from people I talk to, from, just the mood music around different things, that we are approaching the end stage of this coaching search, and that there's going to be, some resolution, barring some sort of last minute snag, of course, that there's going to be some resolution in the pretty near future. The one other thing I would say, I did want to mention, I got this confirmed late last night. I'd heard this number before, but I got it confirmed last night. Indiana is right at about $3 million, maybe a little bit more than, in basically NIL resources it's going to be able to support this coach with. Obviously, that's primarily through Indiana's partner collectives, Hoosiers for Good and Hoosiers Connect. There will always be some other sources. The Hoosier Hysterics have some NIL apparatus, not just for, I believe they have one for football, and they also obviously are very active with basketball as well. And then there are also, it's always, we're saying, there will always be some NIL deals that are just independently set up. Players will just, athletes will just find those on their own. But I just think it's worth saying that is, I have over not just the past few days, but frankly, weeks and months, talked to a few people in the industry about this and tried to get a sense for, does anybody have any idea, like basically how much is enough in NIL? Because every coach loves to talk about how good their NIL program is until they lose a recruit to somebody else, and then suddenly they don't have enough money because they know for a fact these other three programs that they're competing against have much, much more. My sense is 3 to 3.5 million is kind of an agreed upon figure to be at least competitive for the bowl field, competitive in what we now call a Power 4 conference. Obviously, you want to aim higher than that. long term, just for growth purposes, and also, frankly, not to be flippant, but if you're Indiana football, you've got to find ways to kind of turn a little bit of this around. You have to do it a little bit better than some of the other programs you're competing against because of your history and your perception and things like that. And so I think Indiana would like to keep that number growing. And I think Indiana is optimistic. I would say this too, having talked to some people who are very familiar with this in the last 24 hours. I think Indiana is very optimistic that the next hire, both because of that person and their profile and also just because the general energy around the direction of the football program changing potentially for the better, the next hire will trigger a little bit more giving, and maybe that number will go up. Maybe it'll get to 3.5, maybe even optimistically it could get to 4. But the point is, I do think Indiana is going to be able to provide a much more competitive starting point in NIL for its next head coach. Those efforts have been ongoing for a while. Indiana was into the 7 figures, was my understanding, around this time a year ago in NIL efforts, but it's I think approached a point where things are kind of on par with again, maybe not the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Penn States, but a lot of the other programs that Indiana is going to need to compete with in the Big Ten annually to try and get to 6, 7, 8 wins, bowl eligibility, bowl wins, all those kinds of things, retain good players. People talk about NIL to go out and get good players. Sometimes NIL is a lot more valuable in retaining the players you have that you don't want to lose. I do think that number is going to make Indiana competitive in that arena for this next head coach, whoever it is. We're going to stop now. I don't want to go on with this thing because I do suspect this may become outdated in the not very distant future. But I mean, anybody who's followed me knows I don't like speculating too much in this job. I don't want to go any further than I did, but I hope everybody appreciates, like I said, just pushing the boat out even as far as I have. If nothing else, to simply say I do get a strong sense that unless something goes very wrong, this is going to wrap up relatively soon. So we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. IndyStar.com/sports or Twitter.com/Zach Osterman or Twitter.com/IndyStarSports. Whatever happens, when it happens, we will be there. We will have it all for you. Thank you so much for watching, for following along. We'll talk to you soon.